Cave seems to have relaxed into the hysteria of his vocal style, like Elmer Gantry singing Leonard Cohen at a tent revival. That's brilliant.
Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy. That's John over there, and we are going to discuss some music. Today, John is going to offer up an artist and a track for me to go off and listen to. I'm going to give it a go, and then I'm going to come back, and we are going to discuss it for some time thereafter. John, what do you have in store?
Everybody, hop on board the Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds train, now departing platform 5. So another song from our lovable Antipodeans and Brits, I guess. This song is called Dig, Lazarus, Dig. And this is a live version from later with Jules Holland.
Nice.
Okay. Of course.
Yes. Well, that makes it all that much more enticing because I've been really digging Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds with each passing track. And the live performances they put on have been great. And now it's Jules, so I'm sure it's going to be a fucking awesome showing. So, all right, dig, Lazarus, dig. Let me see if I dig this thing. I'll go off, check it out, and then come back and let you know what I think. There they are.
World, and welcome to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds.
Okay, we've got, this is a good view to stop for a moment and assess things. It looks like we've got 2 drummers. All right. One simply not enough. This dude right here is, who's I'm kind of covering up, I think, on the screen share. The Wolfman with the violin is always fun to watch, as is Nick himself. The whole band, really, but man, what a character that guy is. Cool. Yeah, we got this awesome groove. I think I caught some block work in there. That was kind of fun to hear. Blocks, cowbells, all those things, such earworms, even though they're super simple in what they're doing. Let's see where we go.
Larry made his nest up in the autumn branches, made from nothing but high hopes and thin air. He collected up some baby blustered mothers, they took their chances, and for a while they lived quite happily up there. He came from New York City, man, but he couldn't take the pace. He thought it was like a dark world. He went to San Francisco, spent a year in outer space with a sweet little San Franciscan girl.
I don't know if that was, but it looked like Jack White. I don't know what the lineup was for this episode, but that is interesting. I wonder if we're going to get another shot so I can confirm that. Let's take it back. Maybe I'll get a bit of a view.
New York City man, but he couldn't take the pace. He thought it was like a dark world. He went to San Francisco, spent a year in outer space with a sweet little San Franciscan girl.
That looked like the Raconteurs. That's pretty fucking cool. And yeah, this song is awesome. A lot of fun on this.
I can hear my mother wailing and a whole lot of screaming and cheering. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. I want you to dance. Meanwhile, Larry made up names for the ladies like Miss Boo and Miss Quick. He stockpiled weapons and took pot shots in the air. He feasted on their bodies like a lunatic.
Oh, wait. So what I thought was somewhere being played a lead guitar that was kind of adding those accented revving sounds. It's actually, I'm pretty certain at this point, the electric violin. I would love to know how he is getting that sound out of that. I don't know enough about electric violin and what you can and can't do with it as far as manipulating sounds and tones and enhancing it with effects, but it sounds like there's some of that going on, and it's fucking really cool. Because I was quite certain at about halfway through this thing that was coming from some unseen electric guitar. But no, I believe I was mistaken. That's really, really cool.
And wrapped himself up in their soft yellow hair. I can hear chants and incantations, and some guy is mentioning me in his prayers. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself back in that hole.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool.
Yeah, that's definitely Jack. That's so cool that he's kind of just sitting there quietly taking it all in. I think I mentioned earlier in the song I thought I heard blocks, and I think that was also incorrect. As I'm hearing it more, and I've seen it pan a couple times, I think I'm seeing like mounted like bongo drums that are creating that kind of sound, not quite as taut of a resonant sound as a block would provide you. It's got a slight little amount of hollowy echo to it. And I think I saw my man striking it a moment ago. Yeah, this is cool. This is a lot of fun. I'm loving the kind of group vocals that are happening, I think, during the pre-chorus and the chorus, that whole refrain of Lazarus, dig yourself. Yeah, this is really fun shit, man. Let me take this back a little bit.
Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself back in that hole. Well, to cut a long story short, fame finally found him. Mirrors became his torturers. Cameras snapped him at every chance. The women all went back to their homes and their husbands with secret smiles in the corners of their mouths.
My man.
He ended up like so many of them do, back on the streets of New York City in a suit queue, a dope fiend, a slave, then prison, then the madhouse, then the grave. Poor Larry. Well, what do we really know of the dead, and who actually cares? I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. I want you to dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. I want you to dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself back in that hole. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself back in that hole.
Dig Lazarus, dig the brilliant Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. We'll be hearing more from Nick Cave later on.
Yes. That was an awesome performance. That might be my favorite. God, I'm fighting myself like a broken record, I think, every time we do a Nick Cave and the Bad Seed song. I mean, especially when John throws me these live performances, because there's so much more to get wrapped up in, and to kind of extrapolate from the footage. Unsung hero of this song, all the little hand percussions. Your man on the shaker, then, Wolfman, violinist who plays it like Stevie Ray Vaughan. He's going at that sleigh bell, that handheld sleigh bell that he had. That was really cool. Yeah, a lot of fun just percussions in general in the song. Very fun. I loved the beat to this. Those bongo drums were like really infectious. Uh and yeah, this was just all of it. Like the group vocals, the energy of this tune, good shit. Interesting narrative. I've made some mental notes about lyrics, and I'm gonna jot them down. I caught a fairly good bit of it. It was pretty clear, but what wasn't clear was like the euphemisms or metaphors that are going on here. From building a nest in autumn branches or something to that effect to this, moving from New York to San Francisco, back to New York, and what occurred while in those places. And whatever is happening upstairs as well. There are all these little, bits and pieces that I'm sure are, like I said, some sort of metaphor for something far more than just something happening on the floor above you. I'd be interested to learn more about that and discuss it with John. It's fun to see. I believe this is the Raconteurs. It looked like the group in the first shot. Then I think I really just saw kind of Jack tapping on that guitar as he watched kind of intently, quietly as the song went on during that second shot of him. Always cool. As mercurial and prickly as Jack White can be, and I've seen it firsthand. He is an amazing musician and one of my favorites. So cool to see one amazing songwriter appreciating another one in this sort of live setting. So yeah, I loved this. Great. I've come to expect this from Jules Holland. It's kind of like when we're watching something on KEXP or a great Letterman performance. It just adds more to the overall experience, of just listening to music. It's so much more than that. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. I liked it a lot. That awesome violin work as well that had these shades of lead guitar type sounds to it. Very cool shit from a very cool band. Let's get back to John and learn more about this song, shall we?
Brimstone and Treacle, he's back. So you had to listen to Dig, Lazarus, Dig, live on Later with Jules Holland by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. What do you think of it all?
Oh, well, this probably comes as no surprise at all, but I absolutely loved it. It was an awesome performance, with a lot of little Easter eggs and fun bits. So we get an introduction by Jules. Excellent job. The performance kicks off straight away into this like killer groove with some excellent percussions from the, now count them, two drummers on stage. And this gives the rhythms like an added dimension of richness and depth. So that was really fun to see and hear. They aren't alone, though, as other musicians and members of the band kind of churn out this infectious riff before they all join in this chanting refrain, which is quite similar to the song titled Dig Yourself, Lazarus, Dig. They keep repeating that, which I think is like 3 times or maybe 4 times. And then they say, dig yourself back in that. I think it cuts off here, but later it sounds like they say, okay. So yeah. So it cuts off there. And then the verse proper starts, and Cave delivers his lines, and one of the now this is a revelation that will unfold, but at the time it was one of the guitars is periodically doing its best impression of a revving engine of some sort as it whines and grinds. And I'm only catching bits and pieces of the narrative, but it would appear to begin with some metaphor about Larry having built up his nest with high hopes in thin air and autumn branches. Now, I assume that this is like some metaphor that we're getting of some sort, because he kind of abandons the whole bird life analogy as the song progresses. There's also a reference to collecting baby blasted mothers and their happiness living in the aforementioned nest. At this point, it's just it's like he's living a happy polygamous lifestyle high atop some canopy. So interesting lyrics we have thus far. Now, at one point, it pans over, and I think we catch the Raconteurs off stage watching this performance, which is really like, a lot of fun to behold because it's that 2000, I don't know, 8, 10-ish version of Jack White. And I noticed because I saw
He's
that.
pointing, yeah.
Yeah. He's sort of pointing over at what they're doing. And it's at this point, I think I realize, I don't know if this is what they're pointing at, but it's around this time I realize, holy shit, that's not the guitar doing that. That's Wolfman Jack on his electric violin. So then I start thinking, like, I don't know much about the electric violin. I played violin it was like one of my first instruments I ever picked up. I played for like 2 years. And it was in a school setting. So it wasn't like I was plugging that thing in and experimenting with all this stuff. You know what I mean? So I don't know what the logistics are to affecting and the pedals that one might be able to use or deploy on their electric violin. But it sounds like it's more than just violin and amplifier that's going on here. There's like a bit of distortion or some sort of overdrive effect that's being used. But I love that. It's great. So then there's this, the narrative shifts to discussing how Larry temporarily lived in New York City, but didn't like the fast-paced dog-eat-dog lifestyle, so he moved to San Francisco, where he met a local girl and lived in outer space for a year. Depending on what year you have moved, like in this story, it would make perfect sense where one would go to San Francisco and end up living in outer space for a year because it was like the hippie mecca here in the United States for a while there. So that kind of made me chuckle a little bit. Some reference to a wailing mother and scraping of chairs. I don't know if this is like, parts of this really seemed like they were talking about sexual activity. I mean, the baby, like having an affair with married women with babies, and the sounds coming from upstairs, like chairs scraping, could be bed frame moving. I don't know, but I'm trying to pick up and make sense of what's going on in this narrative. Also, at one point, I had this epiphany. I didn't really say anything about it in the reaction, but one of our earliest conversations that just came up organically about the funny ways of like nicknames in the UK, like the for like Chaz and all these the myriad examples that we discussed. I'm starting to think Laz would easily be Larry, right? You know what I mean? And so Larry is Lazarus in this kind of narrative that we have going on here. So yeah, I thought that was kind of funny. It made me laugh. It was like a callback to a conversation I faintly recollect you and I having some time ago in the early stages of this channel. The music then shifts to that pre-chorusy bit, and there's group vocals. That stuff great. You know what I mean? I love that. Adds another layer of vocals to the whole delivery. And we get treated to the group deliver refrain of the chorus as well, which makes sense. That's how the song started. And also, I guess now is a good time to mention this infectious, what I thought earlier was block work, but I get this, it pans on it and I realize it's a mounted set of like bongo drums on and it does have just enough hollow resonance. Like the sound is less taut, if that's a way to describe it. So I could tell, but it did have that, as simple as that is, it becomes very earwormy and infectious, that kind of sound. So that stood out to me. I really like that. So this probably comes as little surprise, but someone who knows this song well, like yourself, but I'm only drifting further and further out to sea when it comes to making sense of the narrative here. As the second verse unfolds, he discusses how Larry has made up names for the ladies like Miss Boo and Miss Quick. He also would appear to be building up an arsenal of some sort while taking pot shots in the air. Lost a little bit on me are these words. Then shit only gets weirder when Cave proclaims old Laz has been feasting on their bodies like a lunatic and wrapping himself in their blonde hair. I'm hoping this also is a euphemism and not literal. Again, I would think that the ravenous nature of it could easily equate to some sort of sexual encounter, not a literal devouring or, wrapping oneself up in the remains. But yeah, there also overheard some chant. There are also overheard chants and incantations and the mentioning of someone in their prayers. I think I'm catching it. At least from I'm catching the words. The meaning is still. We get treated to another pre-chorus and chorus, and it's now that I'm realizing that again, this winding electric guitar that I thought is again more of this violin coming through. And this guy, every one of these live performances, he always steals the show a bit from someone who would be seemingly impossible to steal a show from in Nick Cave. So it's hats off to this guy, because every time he plays, hanging on his every movement, this wild man. Then after this revelation, we get another as the camera pans over to one of again to one of my favorite musicians, this time with Jack White just tapping his finger on the guitar. Less still as much invested, but now he's just completely into the song, and he's not about chatting up what's going on. He's just tapping his finger against that guitar, observing. And now it's just the second little Easter egg. There was also towards the end another group of, I assume, musicians on the show. I didn't know who they were though. The one guy with the sort of the scragglier short beard like seemed familiar to me in some way, shape, or form, but I couldn't put my finger on who it may have been. But hopefully you could fill that in for me as well. But it is fun to watch all of these. Don't play coy with me. It is fun to watch all of these other kind of like movers and shakers in the music industry kind of like enjoying the show that's being put on for them. So we get this final verse, and Cave expands on how fame found Larry. Mirrors became his torture as the paparazzi haunted him with cameras. I'm paraphrasing here. All of the women he had taken pleasure in returned home to their husbands. Oh, alas. And he ends up back in New York, the place that he hated, like so many of them do, in a soup line and on a downward spiral. So it's fun seeing your man go crazy with the sleigh bells. And while on the subject of auxiliary percussions, I should say the shaker made some really nice appearances throughout this song as well. Yeah. And in an interesting way, strictly from like an auditory standpoint, because I've already fawned over this crazy violinist sleigh bell guy a million times, but the percussions really are the backbone of the song, from the dual drums to the mounted bongos to the sleigh bells to the man on the shaker. All of this stuff is really lovely and adds all of this like texture and richness to the rhythms that are going on in this tune. So really, really good stuff. So yeah, each instrument, both large and small, are all doing their part through this really raucous number. And after a final pre-chorus, the band repeats the refrain with everyone chanting along with the lyrics until the song ends. The song and the performance were a whole hell of a lot of fun, with tons of energy and the right amount of attitude. And I'm not sure if it's an observation about the pursuit of fame and how once you find it, it oftentimes will chew you up and spit you out. The last verse kind of pulled all that into focus for me, I think, or at least gave credence to that assumption. I could be completely off. But he ends up back where he started from, no better, maybe even worse from his experience. He fell into all the tropes and traps that you're not supposed to, or that are oftentimes the Achilles heel of the rock and roll star. The drugs, the women, all of the outside stuff, the sex, drugs, and a little less of the rock and roll. So yeah, nonetheless, I really enjoyed the lyrical content, even though it was a bit abstract at times. The group dynamic and the instrumentation was a lot of fun. Those Easter eggs of watching people look on was a lot of fun as well. So yeah, this is great stuff. Probably now my new favorite. I don't know if that's a little bit of like, creature of the moment, or if it's maybe some of the fact that this was live, so that's playing into it and kind of pulling away from strictly the music aspect of my, proclivity in the moment. But yeah, this was, either way, it was a whole hell of a lot of fun checking this thing out.
That's a couple of reasons that I chose this performance. Was Warren Ellis. It's just fucking hilarious, on his violin, dancing around like he's mid-change at a full moon.
It's like when you're looking at them on stage, it's like if your Rottweiler had a pet wolf, because you're looking at Cave, and this guy's got attitude and the whole thing. He is the Rottweiler, But then you look over and you're like, holy shit, this dog's got a pet. Because this version's even crazier than your band. So yeah, it was wild. A lot of stuff.
So there's that. I mean, there's the two shots of Jack White, which I think is just great.
Yeah.
Because the first one's like really interesting. The second one is like he's almost stunned. He's like,
yeah.
Like, I think he's thinking, shit, I've got to follow this.
Yeah. Or I've got to find a way to incorporate some of this into my next project. You can already see like the wheels turning.
Yeah. And then the end as well, the bits and pieces. And then you put onto the top of that, this is an awesome performance and a really, really catchy song. That's got this lovely sort of pop and drive to it. So it's a big favourite of mine as well. So yeah, that's why I thought you'd get a lot
great choice.
So Dig, Lazarus, Dig is the title track and the first single from the band's 14th studio album, released in 2008. Same title. So for this track on the album, Nick Cave, vocals, organ, Martin P. Casey, bass, Thomas Wilder, brushed snare, Warren Ellis, viola and loops, Mick Harvey, electric guitar, and Jim Sclavunas on drums, bongos, and cowbell. Conway Savage is listed as a band member in the album, but he doesn't actually play his usual keyboards on the album, so I don't know why he's there. This was the last album to feature founding member Mick Harvey, who left the Bad Seeds in 2009. Now, this album came about, it was after the first Grinder Man album. And in several interviews, Cave stated the album would sound like Grinder Man, implying this sort of garage rock sound. And in line with the same sort of approach, the album itself was recorded in about 5 days, which is a feasibly short time compared to what they would normally do. Not that they're stretched out, but 5 days is...
Yeah.
So, on the band's official website, Cave wrote about his inspiration for the album, in quotes, "Ever since I can remember hearing the Lazarus story when I was a kid, back in church, I was disturbed and worried by it. Traumatized, actually. We are all, of course, in awe of the greatest of Christ's miracles, raising a man from the dead, but I couldn't help but wonder how Lazarus felt about it. As a child, it gave me the creeps, to be honest. I've taken Lazarus and I've stuck him in New York City in order to give the song a hip, contemporary feel. I was also thinking about Harry Houdini, who spent a lot of his life trying to debunk the spiritualists who were cashing in on the bereaved. He believed there was nothing going on beyond the grave. He was the second greatest escapologist, Harry was. Lazarus, of course, being the greatest. I wanted to create a kind of vehicle, a medium, for Houdini to speak to us if he so desires, from beyond the grave." So I think it's a really cool sort of setup. As you can imagine, critical response was overwhelmingly positive. Reviewers are claiming the album with both a return to greatness and a new side of the band. The album scored 87 out of 100 on Metacritic, universal acclaim. So a few quotes here very briefly. Enemy described Dig, Lazarus Dig as a gothic psychosexual apocalypse and stated that just when the Bad Seeds seemed to content to settle into middle age as a cabaret gospel show band, albeit an extraordinary one, they bared their teeth again. Pitchfork stated that this is how rock musicians are supposed to age. And Uncut wrote that the band has never sounded better, and Cave seems to have relaxed into the hysteria of his vocal style, like Elmer Gantry singing Leonard Cohen at a tent revival. That's brilliant. In a 5-star review, which is out of 5, the Observer, 5-star review, but it's out of 10, you imagine.
Yeah, right.
In a 5-star review, the Observer praised Dig, Lazarus Dig as a triumph from first to last. And Tiny Mixtape said that rock, country, blues, and post-punk rhythms meld with Cave's lyrics on sex, death, God, and America to create what could be one of his most perfect albums yet. The album reached number 4 in the UK and number 2 in Australia and number 64 in the US, which is pretty good going for its time. So let's go into the lyrics a bit, and then I'll go into about the song a bit more. So, as you already said, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself. Back in that cuts. Larry made his nest up in the autumn branches, made from nothing but high hopes and thin air. He collected up some baby blasted mothers. They took their chances, and for a while they lived quite happily there. He came from New York City, man, but he couldn't take the pace. He thought it was like a dog-eat-dog world. He went to San Francisco, spent a year in outer space with a sweet little San Franciscan girl. I can hear my mother wailing and whole lot of scraping of chairs. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself. Dig yourself back in that hole. And then he shouts as he sort of moves away and starts wheeling about with his guitar, I want you to dig. Then he leaves out a verse from the album version, which I'll give to you. Yeah, New York City, he had to get out of there. And San Francisco, well, I don't know. And then to LA, where he spent about a day. He thought even the pale sky stars were smart enough to keep well away from LA. And then the verse he does carry on with. Meanwhile, Larry made up names for the ladies, like Miss Boo and Miss Quick. He stockpiled weapons and took pot shots in the air. He feasted on their bodies like a lunatic and wrapped himself up in their soft yellow hair. I hear chants and incantations and some guys mentioning me in his prayers. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself. Lazarus, dig yourself back in that hole. Then there's another verse which he leaves out. Well, New York City, man, San Francisco, LA, I don't know. But Larry grew increasingly neurotic and obscene. I mean, he never asked to be raised up from the tomb. I mean, nobody ever actually asked him to forsake his dreams. And then he carries on. Well, to cut a long story short, fame finally found him. Mirrors became his torturers. Cameras snapped him at every chance. The women all went back to their homes and their husbands with secret smiles in the corners of their mouths. He ended up, like so many of them do, back in the streets of New York City, in a soap queue, a dope fiend, a slave, then prison, then the madhouse, then the grave. Oh, poor Larry. But what do we actually know of the dead, and who actually cares? I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something going on upstairs. Dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself, Lazarus, dig yourself back in your hole. I want you to dig, and that's repeated 4 times. I will say this, this version is just more than the album version. So the group chanting is louder. Yeah.
Even though it's less lyrical.
Yeah. I mean, it really is more full on. So the group vocals is bigger on this version. The distorted violin effect thing, and I think some of that's looped and some of that is real, but that it's kind of it's smoky and wispy in the album version. It's there, but it's just sort of hovering around. Where here it's bang, really in the front of the mix. As I say, Warren. And also the percussion's really, really nice on this live version. I think it's just an extra sort of pop to it. It's great. As you've already mentioned, fantastic performance by Nick Cave. Warren Ellis is just superb. You can tell always on Jules Holland that it's a great performance when the camera picks up other performers joining in, singing your words. I mean, that is a real sign because that doesn't happen very often. And the icing on the cake, as we've said a couple of times before, is the 2 shots of Jack White, which is brilliant. Yeah. It's obviously he's updated the Lazarus tale, and he's saying what would happen if it happened now, sort of thing. There was some notes which I didn't write down here, but when they're talking about, I think this is from a previous working of the song. There's some, I can hear chairs scraping. There's definitely something going on upstairs. It was kind of a reference to mental activity, like in a comatose patient or whatever, or someone being raised from the dead, like in a coma in a hospital bed and then coming out. But also the upstairs and the chair scraping and, wailing. You get this kind of revivalist meetings you get, in upstairs rooms above pubs and stuff where someone will go and heal people and all that shit. As opposed to a tent out in a in the plains with holding rattlesnakes. It's that at
Yeah.
the time.
Gotcha.
You know.
Thanks for
Um,
translating that for me.
There's one of the bits that was left out, one of the verses left out. I just think this is really cool. When he said, the line zinged to me straight away, and I didn't realize why, but he goes, then to LA, where he spent about a day. He thought even the pale sky stars were smart enough to keep well away from LA. Someone in the notes has put, this may be a reworking of a line from chapter 12 of The Little Sister by Raymond Chandler, who says he was smoking and looking up at the pale stars, which know enough to keep their distance from Hollywood. It's quite similar, but
Yeah.
it's quite nice. And somebody else has put in their notes about when he's talking about he stockpiles weapons and takes pot shots in the air, feasting their bodies like a lunatic, wraps himself in soft yellow hair. They reckon it's a reference to David Koresh, and the religious compound at Waco, etc., or even like Manson. It's these figureheads of a cultish religious sect, which really is about power and violence rather than any religion at all. Yeah, so I don't know who Miss Boo and Miss Quick are. I did look up, but I never found out. It kind of feels to me like it's some sort of literary reference.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. Could be the names of his old teachers. I don't know. But yeah, it's just got a really nice sort of flow to it. And it sort of strikes me that although he's taken the Lazarus story, which, I remember being told all the sort of stories as a kid, it's one of the more impressive ones. It's got this feel almost of someone who's won a talent competition, and their sort of arc of their life after the fame and all that, and then in the soup cube they could easily be ladling it out as well, working behind the big urn, as it were. It's got that kind of feel to it, that modern, what would happen in modern days to someone like Lazarus. They'd do the chat shows and they'd get the little exposés and stuff about their crib and all that sort of crap, and then it would all fade away, wouldn't it? And they would, didn't you used to be, and then the drugs would take over, and that would be it. So yeah, it's really interesting concept as well. And as I say, at the end, all of that aside, it's a great song. It really is.
The main point is that this is a fucking awesome song and performance. So great shout, John. I had a lot of fun with this one, man.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, I should wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, hit the like button, like you would slap a kid messing with his electric violin. Drop some comments. Tell us what you think about this song, this performance. It's great. It's really good to see Jack White standing there looking like a startled sparrow. And this album as well. Yeah, love to hear from you and all your comments. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. And all this meaty goodness could be yours 5 days a week. Go vegan at weekends. That being said, thanks again so much for watching. And we'll see all of you in the next episode of The Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.